In this session, we're going to work with term document matrices in order to build a word cloud. So the first thing we're going to use, we're going to need two packages. First is TM, text mining package, and then we're going to use the word cloud package. You haven't seen me use require before. I've used install.packages in library. Require is similar, but it kind of makes sure it's there, and if it's not there, it'll load it. So it kind of is a little bit easier to use as we go forward. So the first thing I'm going to do after getting those packages loaded, I'm going to read a file. I'm actually going to do a word cloud on our syllabus, or a slightly older version of our syllabus. And so I have that stored in this string variable, and I'm just going to just read the lines into input. Or maybe we need to define that up here. Here we go. Okay, now we'll try. There we go. Now we can, it's already there. We can take a look at the last part of the syllabus is what you'd expect. So each line is kind of what R thought of as a line as it kind of read it into it. You can see there's a bunch of kind of standard boilerplate at the end about disability, ownership of student work, and different things like that. So it is a straight ASCII text file of our syllabus. And just to see the kind of the structure of it, it's just a draft syllabus of 270 lines. So that's kind of what we have there. And now what we want to do is we want to start working with it. So the first thing, in order to actually work with the file, is we convert it into a list of vectors. Let's take a look at what that is. So if we do a structure, words.vector, you can see it's still a lot of things here. It's 270 words, and it kind of gives you that. And then a corpus, we're not going to be working too much with the corpus, but I can take a look at it's kind of an intermediate format, which has a lot of information, obviously, on it. But basically, you can kind of see it's got some information about each word. The term document matrix is really what we'll be working with, so I'll call it TDM. So it's a term document matrix, and it's always built from this kind of word corpus. So if we take a look at that, we can see 270 columns. That's because there was 270 words. And a better way to take a look at it is to do an inspect of the TDM, term document matrix. And by doing this, we'll actually look at the actual matrix, the first 20 rows and 20 columns in the matrix. And what do you think each element in that matrix is in? Each element is in the matrix. What do you think that'll be? Let's take a look. So you can see it's a bunch of zeros and ones. Basically, for every word, whether it's update, homework, lecture, submit, to, any word you might have, it's going to have a 0 if it exists and a 1 if it doesn't exist. So it kind of gives you a feeling for how frequently each of these words exist in each of the different documents, if you will. There's 270 of those lines, which each one of those is a conceptual document. So mainly it's zeros, which is why it's known as a sparse matrix, and it can be kind of stored in a much more efficient way than a traditional matrix. But since it is a matrix, we can obviously convert it into a matrix. And just to see that, again, 270. And you can see all the different rows and columns that there are. And then we can see how many actual words there were. Here's where you can start to get into a more interesting thing. Word counts. So there's 949 words. You've seen that dimension here as well, right? So this was the number of words in the matrix. This was the number of documents or lines, if you will, in my syllabus. And now we have just the words, and for each word, how many times it existed was in there. And from that, we can take a look at different things. So let's take a look at the head of it. For example, the first 10 lines. We can see update was twice, different names of the courses, and different things like that. obviously be much more interesting if we sort it and then take a look at the words. So now you can see one problem we have, which is the most frequent word was the. The next frequent word was and, for. So there's a bunch of words that kind of in the English language, as well as every other language, where, as you know, they're kind of almost context words to help the sentence flow, but they're not really meaningful from our perspective. So what we'll do is we're going to remove those. You can take a look at it first. What happens is, here's a word cloud, and it kind of looks good, except the biggest word is the, which makes sense based on this. So we want to remove those words. If you remember from the lecture, kind of a bunch of different words, stop words, for example. So first we're going to make sure everything's in lowercase. We're going to remove the punctuation. Remove numbers because that's not really what we're interested in. And most importantly, we're going to remove stop words. Now we can take a look at the term document matrix again. Go through these same steps. And let's take a look at 20 highest words. Here we have, so data science class makes sense. Project's a big part of the class. The fact that it's a course, so different things. And now we can build perhaps a more advanced. Here we go. So it's starting to look a little better. It still kind of doesn't jump out at you maybe the way you want it to. So in the word cloud, we can build in additional criteria. For example, only show a word if it occurs at least 3 times in documents, and only show at most 50 words to kind of highlight the most words. So now data, project are starting to jump out. And we can kind of also maybe add some rotation. How much should be rotated? And finally, the last one we're going to add is add some colors. So we can see that some of the words really jump out about what this course is about. Data, weekly assignments, there's going to be a big project, you can do some analysis. Another thing you can do with a term document matrix is you can find association between words. So data is clearly a big word, so what's the association with data? So the most highly correlated words with data, there's a bunch of them. Analysis, collection, explore. I have no idea what Hansen is. Transformation, valuable. You can see what's associated with course. A lot of things. Act, anonymous. Archives, constitutes. Identification. So a lot of different things that are kind of associated. You can do it obviously with any word just to get a feeling for how different words are associated with each other. Maybe one last one we'll do is project, because that's a big part of the course. And we can see project down there is a pretty big word. Data set makes perfect sense. Another thing I'll point out, we talked about that longer words might jump out at you more. So assignment, for example, and project might jump out at you more than may or lab, because it's longer words. And longer words just visually take up more space, even if it kind of has the same weight. So you need to kind of factor that in. But in the end, it kind of gives you a very high-level overview from a text mining perspective, not a natural language perspective, on what the text was about.